Greetings, Dragon Ball fans, and welcome to part 4 of What If Raditz Recognized Piccolo, where Raditz knew a bit too much about the Namekians for his own liking, and Vegeta and Nappa overheard him talking about it. Previously, Raditz has been to Earth, met his brother, and almost paid the ultimate price after being abandoned by his boss, Prince Vegeta. After another Namekian, Piccolo, slipped away with his hopes at Earth's Dragon Balls, and the ship, he went along with that Bulma woman to see if she could provide an out for him. If not a ship, then at least a working scouter that he could use to track down that slippery Guardian guy with. Instead, he got to meet Mr. Popo, and was then taken with Bulma to Yanzabit Heights to see the piece of junk that they called a spaceship. Keeping his reasons to himself, he continued to tag along with Bulma as she took the ship to Capsule Corp, a strange, deceptively small facility where they set about fixing up their prize. After realizing that the oppressive Lord Frieza will likely be on his way to Namek too, Raditz managed to convince them to speed up their departure ahead of his brothers and pals' return. If they can get to Namek, they can not only get at their Dragon Balls, but once Raditz is immortal, he can keep not just Vegeta, but also Frieza himself from getting any wishes in too. It just wouldn't do to have the whole bunch of them, all immortal and milling around the universe, now would it? No, this was going to be his prize and his alone. The trip itself does not go off without a hitch, however. While the woman and her father had fixed up the ship, they'd also added that same downright creepy compression tech as their headquarters, and Raditz's experience with the gravity generator up on his deck does not go that well either. Having reached its original max, some 20 Earth gravities, without too much effort, he'd asked Bulma to upgrade it for him, and oh boy did she. She'd upgraded it so hard he was left drooling on the deck for some 4 days before she'd finally given up trying to call him over the intercom one morning and had gone to check. After cutting power to his entire deck, she'd had to drag his crumpled body to the hatch and man, or I guess woman-handle him down the ladder. Probably just sort of shoving him through, to do what she could to treat him before learning that, rather hilariously, he can't read, at least not her language. After slowly acclimating to higher and higher gravities, all while studying Earth's native language, they ready themselves for what adventures await below the thick rolling clouds of Namek. As they descend through those clouds, the ship is battered and shaken, to the point where Bulma is thrown from the pilot's seat and knocked out. Raditz, meanwhile, just floats there in the middle of the deck and starts to roll his eyes at how feeble she is, before remembering how he still needs her, and maybe something else. Besides, she's a good teacher if nothing else. This time, it's Bulma's turn to open her eyes and look up to see Raditz staring down at her, but there is no trace of the liquid in his eyes, as when the role was reversed those few weeks ago, after the now unmentionable drool-soaked hair and deck-plating incident. Outside, they spot 2 very suave-looking Namekians, and not bothering to don his smashed armor, much to Bulma's nose's delight, they go about welcoming the 2 inside, and then warning them about Vegeta and Nappa, and of course Frieza. The Namekians say that they are very grateful and will surely keep an eye out for... Wait, did they say Frieza? Say, this is a nice ship you've got here. Since there's only the 2 Namekians on the planet, how about they give them a lift? That way they'll be safe. Gotta wait for the solar winds to change so the storm clears up, but that shouldn't take too long. Oh? How long? Raditz asks, while watching Bulma fumble around in her bag. Oh, a couple of days, tops, the one with the cigar says. Raditz leans back on the couch and sighs. Of course. More delays. Why not? Then he notices Bulma's confused expression. She's hunched over a small round tablet thing and is clicking it repeatedly, her eyebrows scrunching up more with each press. What's wrong? He asks. There are no Dragon Balls, she says. What? Raditz jumps up. How do you know that? On the radar, silly, she says, smiling a bit proudly and pointing down at the round tablet. But they're Namekians, aren't they? Raditz asks, and notices that the 2 green men are glancing back and forth awkwardly. Don't they have them on them or something? Bulma stares at him for a second, and then says no. The balls scatter when you use them. Then you have to wait a year for them to reactivate before they show up on the radar again. When Bulma asks how recently they used their Dragon Balls, the 2 Namekians stammer and glance at each other even more awkwardly. You know, Dragon Balls? Namekians make them, apparently. They grant... Bulma trails off as she sees their expression, and the beads of sweat forming. Wait, why do you want to leave your planet? Bulma asks. Well, it's not very nice, is it? Says Zakro as he points out at the raging storm outside. And if Frieza is going to Namek... Why didn't you just ask for nicer weather then? Bulma interrupts them, her eyebrows reaching what Raditz has determined by now means maximum suspicion. Zacro and Ratty, apparently, glance at each other again and then start to sweat even more. Look, we just want your ship, okay? Ratty says, getting up. If Frieza's going to Namek, we've got to get out of the sector. He starts to move towards Bulma, but Raditz is instantly in their way. Sorry, she's got other plans, Raditz says, looking them both up and down, and then smiles. Isn't this Namek? He says, pointing down. The pair of Namekians sigh, and they are no longer Namekians. Raditz's smile turns into a frown for a moment, then back to a more feral kind of smile. I know your species, he says. You're Sakidobos, thieves who can read minds. Damn it, why weren't you thinking about those Dragon Ball things when you were knocked unconscious? Zacro says to Bulma. We're not here for them, Bulma says, poking out from behind Raditz. We came here to warn you, you ungrateful whatever you are. We're on the wrong planet, Raditz sighs. Of course we are. Well, while you're here, the two very much non-Namekians say as they circle their prey. Unfortunately, things do not go that well for them, as Raditz easily stops them both in their tracks, by launching one into the other, and thus both of them into a wall, with enough force to make the ship tip slightly. Be careful! Bulma shouts as she clutches to the couch. You'll break the ship! Oh, sorry, Raditz says, looking at the massive dent in the wall paneling. Best we take this outside, eh, boys? But the pair of Sakidobos, apparently. But the pair of Sakidobos just lay there in a heap, unmoving, except for that trickle of blood dripping from their mouths and ears, and, ooh, that arm looks kind of painful. Huh, Raditz says, poking one of them in an unbroken appendage. I think they're dead. That species is supposed to be pretty strong, aren't they? They're usually at least at his power level or higher. Smiling happily to himself, Raditz drags them to the lift, and then, once that's down, he kicks them both gently, and sends them flying off into the raging storm outside. Back in the ship, they both step over the bloody drag marks and go to look at the control console, only to see that the location data has changed. They're still a whole light year from Namek. How'd that happen? Oh, right, telepathic thieves. They'd probably made them think they were seeing something else. They wait out the storm for a while, and after Raditz comes back from dealing with the third massive tentacle monster that wanted to either eat or mate with their ship, when the clouds start to clear, they blast off and resume their journey. As they approach actual Namek, Raditz looks over at the dragon radar that's just sitting there on the table and frowns, thinking how to work this without pissing off his ride out of here. When they've settled to the ground, Bulma picks up her travel pack and they descend in the lift. Once it's resealed, she walks over to the leg strut and taps the slightly discolored section. Christ, that tech gives him the creeps. The entire ship is just a capsule now? Sure, it's a slightly bigger than usual capsule, but there she is, just dropping an entire spaceship in her pocket. Just like that, a whole ship. The Frieza Force would kill for that kind of tech. Well, I mean, that's a pretty low bar as far as things the Frieza Force has been known to kill for. Imagine being able to send an entire garrison in something the size of a single attack pod. Wait, there were other capsules in that ship, weren't there? That's capsules stored in capsules. It's capsules all the way down? Raditz shakes his mind free from those planet-sized implications, and he stares again at this seemingly puny Earthwoman. Her tech is absolutely terrifying. And she's just smiling back at him, awkwardly. Oh, he's making that face again, isn't he? That awestruck/terrified appreciation face, as she calls it. When she pulls out the dragon radar and does a few clicks, Raditz finally sees their first blip. Say, Bulma, he says, tripping over his previous thoughts. Yeah? The Dragon Balls scatter, you said. Yeah? So... He pauses, unsure how to ask this without giving away too much. Back on Earth, we could just have gone to get them. With that. Well, yeah, she says, smiling that other smile, the you're an idiot one he'd become quite familiar with. So then I could have just, he says as he looks away at the horizon. No, you couldn't, she says, laughing slightly. He looks back at her and she's got a new smile on, one he's not that familiar with. Mr. Popo said that Kami wanted no wishes, and no mention of the Dragon Balls, Bulma says. He knew you wanted them for yourself. Raditz just stares at her. She'd known? This whole time? The hell? Look, Raditz, you seem nice enough while you're not threatening to blow up the planet, but we can't, we just didn't trust you, okay? Oh, is all he could manage. Hey, don't be mad, she says, smiling again. We're here. We can warn the actual Namekians, and maybe stick it to that Frieza guy and your old boss. Then, after a pause, he is your old boss, right? Yeah, I guess, Raditz shrugs. It just would have been a lot easier if I was already immortal, you know? That way I don't have to worry about the pain parts, or the death parts. Speaking of which, do you sense anything? She asks, looking around at the utterly bland horizon. Sense anything? What do you mean by that? Raditz asks, looking around where she is. You know, sense any energies. Oh, she looks at him with half of that you're an idiot smile again. You can't sense energies like your brother and all them back on Earth, or wherever they are now, can you? He stares at her for a bit, connecting Piccolo and then Goku's strange ability to track him with what she's just said. She, in turn, digs into her pack and pulls out the scouter and tosses it at him. He turns it over in his hand and then says that they can't risk it. As soon as he turns it on, it will connect to the Frieza Force network, and everything they scan or say will be broadcast for all to hear. Bulma puts her hands on her hips and cocks her head, now definitely smiling that you're an idiot smile again. Oh, please, I'm not stupid, she says, pulling out a small hand terminal thing. I pulled out that clunky comm for a smaller one that only we can use. Also upgraded the energy capacitors after you blew them out for the 5th time on the trip here. Raditz just stares at her, then down at the scouter. He blew out the capacitors 5 times? Just how strong is he? He holds the scouter out and asks her to check his numbers. When she says that last time she checked it was just over 120,000, he laughs, not believing her for a second. No way I'm as strong as Captain Ginyu. Who? Bulma asks. Is he stronger than Frieza? And now it's Raditz's turn to roll around laughing, until he remembers that if his power level is 120,000, then if Frieza is here, they'll already be on their way, and well, they're screwed. When he explains to Bulma why he's got his terrified awe look on his face again, Bulma says to hush. She'd checked his power level again after those fake Namekians, and he'd gotten it down to only 13,000 something. It only spikes up when you're thumping around under high gravity, she says. Then, after staring at him for a moment, what? 13,000, he says, staring at his hands. That certainly explains the thieves' fate. Well, come to think of it, he does really have to try when he's upstairs working out, doesn't he? So, it worked. That weighted clothing thing actually works. He is about to pull on that thread he has to even move around under 100 Gs, or 10, depending on your point of reference, when he remembers, again, that if anyone in the Frieza Force picks him up, that would be bad. Well then, he says, breathing slowly and trying to relax that thread as much as possible, what's my power level now? Bulma finally takes the scouter and, after a moment to install it and activate it, says 9,000. 9,000, he breathes. I'm so relaxed I could fall asleep, and I'm still half as strong as even Vegeta. Maybe she wasn't lying about 120,000. That's still not in Frieza's league by a long shot, but still. It's more power than he'd ever dreamed of having. Even 20,000 would have suited him just fine. To finally be able to pull one over on that smug little prince. See, Bulma says, you're just like your brother. Huh? How so? He asks, genuinely interested. You pushed yourself and trained, just like him. She smiles, a different kind of smile he'd only seen once before. And you got stronger for it, just like our Goku. Their slightly awkward smiling is interrupted by the scouter, that's still affixed to Bulma's head, when it chirps, activating on its own. She yelps in surprise, then looks in the direction indicated by the thing, and says that someone's coming. 4 someones, actually. How strong are they? Raditz asks, staring in the same direction, unable to detect anything. 1,400, 1,500, 1,900, and 2,100, Bulma says. Nothing too impressive. If they're Frieza Force, Raditz says, looking down at the armor he'd finally put back on. Bulma's cheeks go bright red, and she turns away as he pulls the armor off. Then he asks her if she's got a storage capsule he can hide it in. No use parading around in Saiyan body armor, as if they too were in the Frieza Force. So the Frieza Force uses Saiyan body armor too? Bulma asks while digging around for a crate capsule, carefully facing away from him. Best armor money can buy, Raditz says proudly, then remembering his apparent number now. Well, probably not when you're in the hundreds of thousands. His armor hidden away, replaced by his usual tank top and sweatpants, they start to walk towards the approaching powers for a while until the four figures become visible. Yep, they're Frieza Force all right. Typical low-level goons, Raditz thinks to himself. Oh man, he was a low-level goon up until a month ago. How weird is that? When the four figures drop down in front of them, they aim their blasters and demand that these clearly not Namekians surrender themselves and give up any Dragon Balls. No Dragon Balls here, Raditz says, cracking his knuckles, and wondering if he can do this without accidentally pulling on that thread he was so used to clinging onto for dear life just to stay in the fight with Nappa and Vegeta. And with the four Frieza Force minions blasted away in short order, and Bulma just a bit flustered by Raditz picking her up, they fly off towards the nearest cluster of truly low-level powers, and we will bring Part 4 to a close. Now presumably on Namek proper, it looks like the Frieza Force has indeed got there first. Will Raditz and Bulma be able to make contact with the natives before getting caught out? When are his brother and friends going to weigh in on things? Will it even matter if they do? Find out next time on Dragon Ball. What if Raditz recognized Piccolo?